Lucian charges toward the dragon eggs while Renal eagerly declares that they don't have to split the eggs because everyone is sure to get one. Meanwhile, the soldier from the Isaac family commands everyone to hurry up and gather all the eggs. Sal, on the other hand, thinks they're all idiots who are in a rush to become dragon snacks. True enough, the cavern trembles as a deep growl reverberates through the air. A demonic dragon bursts out of nowhere, his gigantic body shifting. Everyone runs for their lives except for Sal and Gloria, who are ready to take on the dragon. Sal tells Gloria to cover the rear while everyone else takes the eggs and leaves. Just then, the teleportation altar shoots up into the air, hovering ominously beside the shadows. Everyone freezes, a mix of terror and confusion rippling through the group. Standing atop the plate is a young man named Gray, calmly turning the crystal in a keyhole. The sight of him confuses and unsettles the shadows, who demand to know what he is doing. Gray's mind, however, is recalling Leon's instructions. Use the shadows as bait for the dragon. Secure the egg and destroy the teleportation altar to ensure no one from the Isaac family escapes. As for Sal, Leon had said he could fend for himself. Gray, resolute in his belief, justifies his actions as a sacrifice for the Cooper family, the only ones he deems worthy of possessing the dragon egg. The shadows voice their outrage, ordering him to return immediately, but Gray is already ascending from the cavern. He really said yeet. Gloria notices the commotion, casually mentioning that the Cooper family head is truly ruthless in abandoning everyone, even Sal. Sal, however, is unfazed by what happened, commenting that he had expected it. This baffles Gloria, as she can't believe that Sal still carried on with the mission despite knowing that he might get betrayed. However, Sal is too preoccupied with the demonic beast in front of them, so he tells Gloria that she's thinking too much. Just then, the dragon stirs, releasing a stream of fire from its massive mouth. Sal quickly leaps from the ground, sword in hand, declaring that he won't die in such a horrible place. With a cold expression, he slices off one of the dragon's wings, making the beast roar in pain. However, the dragon retaliates fiercely, swiping him into the ground with its claw. Gloria rushes to Sal's aid, activating her moonshine sword shield to protect them both from another wave of fire. Gloria playfully teases Sal, asking him why he said those big words. She then asks if he's okay, and Sal responds while getting back on his feet. He claims that he's fine, and then he orders Gloria to delay the dragon while he tries to attack its heart. With a serious look, he reminds Gloria to successfully do the task, as she's the only one capable of performing it. Empowered by Sal's words, Gloria rises to the challenge, charging at the dragon with precision and skill. Gloria distracts the dragon, and she quickly calls Sal to pull the finishing blow. However, he only stands still, forcing Gloria to take on the dragon by herself. She uses the sword dance of destruction, knocking it unconscious. Believing it defeated, Lucian and Reno approach its head, kicking at the massive beast in triumph. However, their celebration is cut short when the dragon's eyes snap open, and it roars with renewed fury. The group scatters as the dragon prepares for another devastating assault. Sal, now recovered, steps forward with the swordsmanship inheritance third skill and blood shadow slash. Just then, streams of the dragon's blood surge outward, forming shadowy clones under Sal's command. The display leaves the group awestruck as this rare and forbidden magic is associated only with the Cooper family. Seeing this, Gloria makes theories in her head, knowing that the sword spirit in the Cooper family has disappeared. Just then, she realizes that Sal intentionally stood back earlier so she could draw the dragon's blood, making her furious. Sal, on the other hand, is unapologetic about his strategy. Determined to rewrite his fate and no longer be used as a pawn, Sal channels all of his power into a final strike. With a decisive blow, Sal severs the dragon's head, making the massive creature collapse. As the beast's head drops to the ground, everyone suddenly gathers around Sal. However, he quickly grabs his blade, warning the group to stay back. As the tension lingers, Sal suddenly grabs his face, his expression twisting into something dark. Just then, the blood pooling around him ripples unnaturally, and from its depths, the sword spirit's reflection appears. The sword spirit taunts Sal, claiming that he can't escape his clutches, although he killed him. The spirit then plays with Sal's hair, warning him that he will succumb to the same curse as him, a hunger for blood and flesh that cannot be sated. Meanwhile, the group stands frozen in shock, their fear rendering them speechless. The sword spirit points directly at Gloria, mocking Sal and calling her his prey. Out of nowhere, Sal leaps into the air, screaming for more blood and unable to control his own movements. The shadows scatter in panic, while Lucian yells in horror that Sal has overused blood magic and transformed himself into a demon. Just then, amid the chaos, Andrea appears before Sal, begging him to stop. Sal's distorted consciousness struggles as if drowning in an endless sea, but Andrea's presence pulls him back. Slowly, the darkness recedes and Sal loses consciousness. Later on, he wakes up in a forest with Andrea beside him, explaining that she used a purification spell to stop his demonification. Andrea smiles and triumphantly reveals the last intact dragon egg, holding it up as if it were a trophy. Behind her, Gray kneels on the ground with his hands tied behind his back, clearly regretting what he has done. Andrea then reassures Sal that she didn't tell the Isaac family about the dragon egg. Gloria has already left with her team, so Sal doesn't have to worry about completing the mission. Sal thanks Andrea, but he clarifies that he wasn't worked up about that issue. He had intended for Mayo to take her far from the Cooper family and fake her death to keep her safe. However, Mayo's failure gnaws at him and frustration boils over. Swinging his sword, he curses the griffin for botching the plan. Mayo responds with a sorrowful chirp, desperately trying to communicate that Andrea wanted to enter the realm herself. This poor bird needs Duolingo. However, this only enrages Sal further, thinking that Mayo has learned to talk back. Suddenly, Andrea steps between them, spreading her arms wide to defend the creature. Just then, Reinald and Lucian call Sal, drawing their swords as they rush forward. Sal smirks, thinking that the two are about to take the dragon egg away from him. To his shock, Reinald and Lucian pierce their swords through Gray's back, causing blood to splatter everywhere. They kneel before Sal, pleading with him to forgive their rudeness. They then thank Sal for saving them after being abandoned by the family, as they would have been long dead if it weren't for him. They drop to their knees, bowing deeply, and offer a heartfelt apology for their previous behavior. They admit they owe their survival in the Forgotten Ruins to him, despite their family abandoning them. With newfound loyalty, they swear unwavering allegiance to Sal instead of the family, vowing to follow him even in death. Sal is momentarily stunned by their devotion, but doesn't have time to dwell on it as Andrea lets out an excited scream. She points to the dragon egg, which is beginning to crack. Just then, a demonic dragon emerges from the egg, flying into the air with glee. Andrea gasps in awe, while Sal raises his hand towards the beast. He declares that demon dragons will only follow the strongest, so he asks the little one if it accepts him as its master. Without hesitation, the dragon presses its cheek on Sal's palm, making the shadows impressed. As the little dragon spreads its wings and takes flight, a voice rings out congratulating Sal on taming the beast. On that very day, the rebel force against the family was born. Elsewhere, Alan and Hera lounge on the sofa, waiting for Leon to finish his work so they can go to the horse racing tracks. Leon, however, slams his hand on the table, calling Alan worse than a bastard child. Well, this is definitely going to cause some daddy issues. He rails against the news of Sal Cooper, the boy who not only killed a dragon, but also tamed his offspring. Sal's growing legend looms large, leaving Leon disappointed in his own son. Just then, Hera questions why Leon is angry at Alan when he could have done the same if given the chance. Leon, on the other hand, wants nothing to do with them, so he angrily dismisses the two. With this, Hera takes Alan by the arm and leads him to the racetrack. As they walk, Alan orders a servant to prepare his horsewhip. Hera, on the other hand, asks Dove about the progress of their research into deprivation magic. Dove reports that the research is complete and only a suitable test subject with S-rank talent is needed. Hera is pleased to hear this, as she has long been itching to get rid of Sal. 5 years later, Sal grows into a skilled and powerful man. Thanks to Andrea's purification spells, he won't be demonized despite using the sword technique as much as he wants. Sal then thanks Andrea for her constant support, but she humbly says she should be the one thanking him for gifting her with a wonderful staff. However, their conversation is interrupted by a noise outside the window. Sal quickly opens it and shouts to identify the intruder, but he sees no one. His instincts tell him that something has escaped, but the figure he saw clearly belonged to the housekeeper. Just then, Reinald and Lucian arrive with their report. They track the housekeeper and discover he was recruiting a group of black magic mages to conduct a ritual in 3 days. The housekeeper has also mentioned finding a new target with S-rank talent, someone with extraordinary magical abilities. Sal wonders if they're about to be in the deprivation magic, but it doesn't make sense because they're not directly targeting him. Just then, the truth dawns on him. The only target with extremely high magic abilities is none other than Andrea. 3 days later, Andrea cleans a storage room, unaware of the danger that might befall her. Out of nowhere, Doug creeps behind her and covers her mouth with a handkerchief, knocking her unconscious. Not long after, she gets surrounded by cloaked mages, chanting spells that make her levitate. Of course, we can't do that without this view. The mages' voices rise as they create a glowing seal, calling for Andrea's power to flow and submit to their will like a shadow. Meanwhile, Doug stands over her with a sharp blade, ready to stab her and draw her heart's blood to complete the ritual. However, mere seconds before the blade lands, Andrea disappears into thin air. Just then, she appears behind Doug, claiming that she used illusion magic on him. She warns him not to underestimate her as she unleashes the shining star long, binding him with glowing ropes. The old man sneers at the mages, commanding them to take down Andrea. The mages prepare to attack, but Andrea closes her eyes and covers her ears, focusing on Sal's instructions. Suddenly, a strange noise echoes above them. Doug looks up in alarm as Sal's griffin and full-grown dragon descend from the skies, attacking the mages one by one. The mages scream in terror as the monsters eat their flesh, rendering them helpless. Meanwhile, Doug takes a hint from seeing the beasts, guessing that Sal is behind it all. True enough, Sal steps into view, his expression dark and menacing. With his sword pointed at Doug's face, Sal demands to know why he targeted Andrea. Doug stutters, confessing that deprivation magic can only be used once on a target. To ensure that Alan receives Sal's talent, they must first find a human test subject. As Doug pleads for his life to be spared, Sal's expression hardens when he realizes that Andrea's life was in danger because of him. Just then, Sal turns to Doug, telling him that he'll let him go under one condition. He then cuts his palm, letting his blood drip onto the magic circle where Doug kneels. Seeing this, Doug panics, knowing that Sal is about to perform the Shadow Oath. Grabbing the old man by the hair, Sal then commands him to go back and tell the matriarch that the deprivation magic ceremony was a success and could be conducted on him immediately. If he fails, he's good as dead. Doug struggles in Sal's grasp, asking him why he's doing all this. With a cold expression, Sal simply reveals that he intends to expose Alan's true colors. The next morning, Doug tells Hera that the deprivation experiment is a success. Of course, he's capping, all part of Sal's plan. Nearby, Alan is miserably failing to convince Gloria to join him for a stroll in the garden. Gloria isn't having any of it and shuts him down on the spot. I mean, who would say yes to that hairstyle anyway? Hera, on the other hand, is all smiles as she listens to Doug's report. She's already piecing together how this will play out, with the upcoming full moon conveniently coinciding with Alan's coming-of-age ceremony. It's the perfect setup to make Alan the family's future head and the strongest man in the Empire. Meanwhile, Alan relentlessly tries to rizz up Gloria, asking her if she's only playing hard to get. He's confident that no woman could possibly resist him, but Gloria unapologetically bursts his bubble. She suddenly draws her sword, calling Alan unworthy of being her fiancé. She challenges him to defeat her in a duel, causing Alan to lose his marbles. Clearly, this boy doesn't understand women. Bro, if she's making you do all this to get her, she doesn't see you as Chad or Tyrone. Alan decides she must be crazy and shouts for someone to come and drag her away. Before anyone can step in, Sal arrives and deflects Gloria's sword like it's nothing. Just then, Sal smirked and made a snarky remark about Alan needing help to handle one woman. Furious, Alan justifies that he didn't need help and he just forgot to bring a sword with him. Meanwhile, Gloria's mood shifts as soon as she sees Sal. She clings to his arm, pleading for him to come train with her. Sal shrugs her off, saying he's busy, which only makes Alan fume in anger. Watching the two of them interact, Alan starts to suspect that Gloria might actually have feelings for Sal. That thought drives him nuts, but he convinces himself that he will take care of Gloria as soon as he marries her. I don't understand why he's ready to be a beta male simp. With Hera summoning him, Alan turns his back on the two, declaring that he's leaving because Gloria is not willing to accept his request. Gloria is more than happy to hear this, and she gladly bids him goodbye. Once Alan's gone, Gloria points her sword at Sal again and says if he doesn't agree to train with her, she will attack him. Sal finally gives in but adds a condition. She has to introduce him to her brother, Duke Isaac. Later that night, Sal stands before Duke Hugh Isaac, laying out his bold proposal. He claims he has a way to cancel Gloria and Alan's engagement, but he needs the illusionary time box, the Isaac family's heirloom. Sal recalls that in his previous life, Hugh was fiercely opposed to the engagement between Gloria and the playboy Alan. Hugh had tried multiple times to cancel it, but the royal family had refused. This time, Sal plans to exploit that history to his advantage. However, Hugh only refers to Sal as an arrogant kid and scoffs at the idea that someone like him could undo a royal engagement. Sal is unbothered by the insult, and he confidently states that only someone like him can solve Hugh's problems. As Sal draws his sword, Hugh's eyes widen in shock, realizing that Sal is the Cooper family's S-rank talent. Sal suddenly steps forward, his blade clashing against Hugh's. He then delivers his chilling alternative. If the engagement can't be cancelled, then the solution is simple. They'll destroy Alan instead. Sal asks Hugh for his thoughts, but the Duke remains silent. A month later, preparations for Alan's coming-of-age ceremony are in full swing at the Cooper mansion. Doug reports to Hera that everything is ready, but Sal is missing and Alan has gone searching for him. Hera orders Doug to assist Alan in locating Sal. In the mansion's lower halls, 3 of the Cooper family's illegitimate children have gathered, curious about the reason for their summons. One of them speculates that the purpose is to secure Alan's position as heir, ensuring their loyalty to him without question. Another sarcastically comments on Alan's swordsmanship, claiming he's destined for greatness. A third warns the others to keep their voices down, fearing that the family head might overhear their conversation. Nearby, Leon receives an update that all the guests have been seated. To ensure the event proceeds without delay, the staff has already followed his instructions to begin. However, before Leon can make his grand entrance, he is intercepted by Hugh. The Duke, with an air of casualness, comments on the coincidence of their meeting and requests a brief conversation. Leon, however, remains skeptical and points out that he doesn't remember inviting Hugh. In response, Hugh explains that as it's his future brother-in-law's coming-of-age ceremony, he decided to invite himself. Meanwhile, hidden just behind a nearby wall, Sal and Lucian watch the exchange closely. Sal notes that all the guests have now arrived, signaling Lucian to activate the illusionary time box. Lucian swiftly moves off to carry out the task. The box hums to life as the mages focus their magical energy to open it. Together, they chant the incantation. Gates of the Abyss, shadow-woven fantasy, illusionary time box, virtual realm. Open. As they speak the words, a web of intricate patterns unfurls in the sky, glowing with an eerie light. Sal stands hidden in the shadows, his mind racing with thoughts and calculations as the magic unfolds. Suddenly, Alan approaches him, menacingly asking why he's hiding alone in the shadows. Bright energy pulses from the basement, where Sal is helplessly chained to a cross. Alan stands before him, declaring that Sal's incredible swordsmanship will soon be his. Without warning, Alan strikes, plunging a blade deep into Sal's heart. Suddenly, Andrea wakes with a start, fear gripping her chest. She realizes she's just had a nightmare. Startled and disoriented, she finds herself resting near a pile of tomato crates. Her vision, vivid and disturbing, wasn't just a dream, but a glimpse from a previous life. As a time mage with the power of the stars, she can glimpse fragments of the past and future. Now she understands that Sal is in grave danger. Driven by urgency, she bolts through the forest, her heart racing as she races to save him. However, when Andrea arrives at the estate, she spots Alan with Sal, offering him a glass of wine. She recognizes the scene from her vision and knows she has found them. Summoning her power, she attempts to cast a spell to stop Alan. But before she can act, Hera commands one of her men to restrain her. Hera, momentarily alarmed, recalls Doug's assurance that the experiment was a success and wonders how Andrea could still wield magic. Shaking off her doubts, Hera shifts, focus back to the ritual. In the basement, Alan chains Sal to a cross, seething as he questions how Sal dared to possess an S-level talent, defeat a demonic dragon, and win Gloria's favor. Each question is punctuated with violent blows, causing blood to drip from Sal's mouth. To Alan, everything Sal has should rightfully belong to him. Someone please give this diva some attention. Just then, Hera intervenes to calm Alan, instructing him to proceed with the ritual. Dove presents a specially crafted dagger capable of piercing Sal's otherwise indestructible body. Alan promptly takes the weapon, taunting Sal before delivering a critical blow to his chest. Blood pours from Sal's mouth as Alan gleefully declares himself the only worthy heir of the Cooper family. Suddenly, Sal laughs, asking if Alan is putting on a play. With shocking ease, he breaks free from his chains, his defiance leaving everyone stunned. With a snap of his fingers, the scene around them shifts. The walls dissolve, and in an instant, they are all transported to the banquet hall, surrounded by a crowd of onlookers. The air is thick with tension as the onlookers process what they just saw. The gathered guests whisper in shock, their voices filled with judgment. They openly question Alan's worthiness as heir to the Cooper family and mock the rumors of his so-called talent. Hera, on the other hand, freezes, her mind racing to understand how Sal could have anticipated their plan. Alan, in a panic, screams accusations, insisting he has been set up. Among the crowd, Duke Hugh Isaac applauds sarcastically, claiming that he just witnessed a spectacular show. The situation worsens as Leon steps forward, screaming Alan's name in a fit of rage. At least this fight isn't freezing on Netflix. As Leon draws closer to Alan, Hera steps forward and takes responsibility for the young master's actions, claiming that she told him to do it. However, Leon doesn't listen and simply smacks Alan to the ground. Well, that was overdue. Alan quickly screams that he has done nothing wrong as everything that Sal has should have been his. Despite Alan's desperation to salvage his image, the guests continue to gossip about the Cooper family, pointing out how they like to maintain appearances. Leon unsheathes his sword and declares to his bastard that the succession contest shall begin, a ruthless battle for the right to become the family heir. The bastards, quick to pounce on the opportunity, promptly draw their swords, knowing that there are no restrictions to this competition. Victory will belong to whoever emerges as the strongest, and the winner will claim everything. Leon suddenly orders the assembled bastards to start by eliminating Alan, marking him as the first target. I don't think this decision surprises anyone. Among the crowd, Duke Hugh Isaac mocks the so-called Cooper family spirit that is above all else. He then declares the marriage contract between his sister and Alan void, refusing to tie his family to a weak liar. However, Leon only glares at him, masking his fury with a calculated response. He suspects the recent events were orchestrated with the help of an illusion box, which belongs to Isaac's family. For now, he decides to step back and deal with Hugh in the future. He then shakes the Duke's hand, reassuring him that he will send a request to the king. Just then, Leon points his sword towards Sal, warning him that he can fight for the title of heir, but he can't do anything to tarnish the family name. If he defies him, he's as good as dead. However, Sal only chuckles, bluntly saying that he doesn't care about the title. Unfazed, he wraps his palm around Leon's blade, challenging him to kill him on the spot if he's truly capable. Leon hesitates, unsettled by Sal's audacity and strength, before ultimately sheathing his sword and walking out. As Leon leaves, one of his men asks if they're not going to teach Sal a lesson. However, Leon simply replies that there is no need for it because he's looking forward to what Sal can do. Sal's bratty attitude does bother him, and he's not sure where the young man got it from. Really? You're not sure? Okay, let's move on. In Alan's quarters, Hera furiously asks Doug how Sal learned of their plans, but the old man struggles to answer. Just then, one of the servants brings Andrea forward, asking what should be done with her. Without hesitating, Hera commands the servant to feed her to the demonic creatures. Just then, Hera pauses, realizing that Andrea was previously using magic despite being put under a deprivation test. This makes her theorize that the deprivation test never happened. With a cold stare, Hera asks Doug to prove that Andrea has been stripped of her magic. As expected, the man comes up with an alibi, claiming that her power is too advanced and that he needs a few more days to master the spell. However, Hera isn't having any of it, and she commands her men to execute Doug on the spot. Doug desperately pleads for Hera to spare his life, and he even tries revealing that Sal forced him to do all of it. However, Hera's mind is made up, and she sees everything as a simple act of betrayal. With Doug's lifeless body lying on the floor, Hera approaches Andrea, her cold hand wrapping around the young woman's neck. She informs Andrea that her talents will be put to good use, making the most of the situation. With effortless strength, Hera lifts Andrea off the ground, still clutching her throat. As she observes Andrea, Hera notices something odd. There are no burn marks on her skin. This indicates that Andrea is an ice soul body, a rare and powerful gift. Such individuals are known for turning into hotbeds that can enhance their partner's abilities as they mature. Hera realizes the potential in Andrea, sensing that she could be a valuable asset. The next day, Sal wrestles with Leon's baffling decision to keep Alan in the family despite his inferior nature and lack of talent. He concludes that Hera's influence and her formidable connections must be shielding him. He then theorizes that Hera is planning to control him, and that's why she arranged for him to stay under the castle the previous night. Despite all of this, Sal tells himself that he won't leave until Alan tastes all the pain he suffered. Just then, he hears footsteps approaching, thinking it's Andrea. However, Gloria enters the room, proudly announcing that she has come for the family heirloom. However, Sal is lost in thought, thinking that if he can gain the Isaac family's support, then he can just directly kill Alan. Gloria notices that he's not paying any attention, so she calls him out on it. Just then, Sal hands Gloria the box, asking why the Isaac family treats something that can only create illusions to be the family heirloom. It seems uncanny, as Gloria's family is on the same level as the Cooper family. Gloria hesitates before cryptically hinting she won't explain until he pushes her further. In her head, there's nothing to lose because no one believes the legend and all the nobles know about it anyway. Sal, on the other hand, simply lets her go, thinking that her condition is something more sly. Gloria suddenly bursts in anger, clarifying that she only wants to fight with him. Shortly after, the two stand face to face in a large arena. Gloria swings at him, but he blocks her strike and pushes her back. With a swift motion, he places the tip of his sword on her and says she lost again. Gloria huffs, complaining that he's no gentleman. Sal then reminds her that she wanted him to use all of his powers, and now that she failed to beat him, she must tell him the illusionary time box's secret. Reluctantly, Gloria admits that the box legend is just that, a legend. No one truly knows if it's real. Wanting to know more, Sal asks her to elaborate. Gloria then explains that according to the legend, if you gain the recognition of the power of the stars and master the illusionary time box, you can sacrifice your entire life to let someone be reborn. The revelation strikes Sal in the chest, realizing that in his past life, Andrea sacrificed herself to bring him back. He clenches his fists, understanding the weight of his responsibility. Not only must he avenge his death, but he must also protect Andrea, the one who saved him. He promises himself that Alan will never get near her again. Suddenly, Renault and Lucian burst into the room, informing Sal that Andrea had been captured. How ironic. Sal's face hardens with fury as he demands to know who the culprit is. Renault explains that during the operation last night, someone saw Andrea get captured by the matriarch and some servants in the forest. As this news spreads, the maids gossip among themselves. Gloria overhears them, and she learns that Andrea has been taken into the young master's service, and when she comes of age, she will become his mistress. Gloria is confused as she initially thought that the young master the maids were referring to as Sal, but this is clearly not the case. Out of nowhere, Alan bursts out of the room screaming that Alan is courting death. Gloria immediately tells Renault and Lucian to follow Sal, because he might actually end up killing Alan. Meanwhile, in his room, Alan is seething with rage. He clenches his fists, furious at how he was humiliated in front of the nobles. He then swears that Sal will suffer the most terrible death for what he's done. Just then, a servant tries to calm him down, reminding him that his mother had instructed him to wait until he comes of age. Furious, he kicks another servant kneeling behind him, screaming at him to go to hell. Suddenly, the servant who calmed him down nervously suggests that he take out his anger on Andrea. He then reveals Andrea behind the curtains, chained and defenseless. The servant tells Alan that Sal is fond of the girl and that she can pay for Sal's crimes. With an evil laugh, Alan commends the servant for such a brilliant idea. Just then, Alan walks toward Andrea, mockingly calling her his future mistress, promising her that under his guidance, she will learn her place. Andrea trembles, her hands bound by chains that suppress her magical power. She can only cry in fear, praying that Sal will come to her rescue. The sight of her horrified face makes Alan laugh, and he wonders how Sal will react if he sees Andrea being humiliated as a slave. Just then, Alan reaches out to Andrea, savoring to touch her with his disgusting hands. However, before he can land a finger on her, Sal appears and unleashes a shattering punch to his sorry face. Alan is sent reeling, screaming in pain as Sal's fury overtakes him. The strikes are relentless, and Sal holds no fear of kicking Alan in his crotch area. Damn, that's gotta hurt. As Alan's servants rush to defend him, Sal remains a storm of violence, determined to make sure Alan never poses a threat again. Just then, Renault and Lucian burst into the room, calling for Sal to stop, but he doesn't listen. Meanwhile, Gloria rushes to Andrea, breaking her free from the chains. She urges Andrea to act quick, as Sal is starting to demonize again. Andrea, still shaking, promptly grabs Sal's arm, pleading for him to wake up from his fury. Upon hearing her voice, Sal slowly regains control over himself. Bro really just went full-on John Jones on him. He should have done the Trump dance after that beatdown. As Alan's servants grab his injured body away, Hera bursts into the room, pointing a trembling finger at Sal. She accuses him of betraying his father's kindness for allowing him to stay in the castle. Sal, unfazed, grips the pendant around his neck and steps forward, summoning his sword into his hand. Hera starts to quiver, unable to understand his next move. Suddenly, Sal cuts his palm and challenges Alan to a holy battle to the death. With Sal's blood dripping on Alan's head, he's determined to end the threat to Andrea's life. 7 days later, the day of the duel has finally come. The arena is filled with spectators, including the heads of the Cooper and Isaac family, all gathered to watch. Let's hope this isn't a scam like the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. Sal, prepared for battle, mocks Alan for showing up at all, as he had expected he would run away. However, Alan questions why he would waste such an opportunity to crush him like a weak insect. Just then, Sal's gaze narrows on Alan's shield, and he senses a bad feeling from it. The duel begins, and Alan quickly unleashes the shield's power, releasing petrification lasers. Sal swiftly dodges, surprised by the power of Medusa's gaze. As Sal tries to close the distance between them, Alan mocks the so-called Gold Swordsmaster, who now looks like a dancing monkey. Despite the overwhelming chaos, Sal remains calm and methodical, analyzing the situation. He understands that the Shadow Oath won't make him immune to Medusa's attacks because an abnormal status like petrification doesn't count as damage. This means there is no way to transfer it via the Shadow Oath. In that case, his only option is to destroy the shield. Meanwhile, Alan boasts that Sal made the mistake of stealing the sword of Perseus, as it allowed him to obtain the shield of Medusa. He claims that this is the difference between a child of destiny and a rebellious person. Just then, Sal closes the distance between him and Alan. He leaps before Alan, but the latter points the shield towards him, ready to use the petrification laser. However, before the shield could unleash its power, Sal swung his sword with precision, aiming to strike at the shield's eyes. Sal's attack lands, gouging out the Medusa's eyes and causing green blood to spew everywhere. The shield cracks and Sal's sword begins to turn to stone, but streams of magic flow from the cracks, slowly healing the damage. Sal quickly swings his sword towards Alan, certain that he will kill him. However, Alan uses his magic to dodge the attack, and he boasts that he is a staff mage now. In a fit of arrogance, Alan unleashes black magic known as the Curse Art's corruption. He calls on the vengeful souls, commanding them to devour everything. Seeing this, Hugh can't help but call Alan a raging bastard. Gloria is confused, so Hugh explains that this vile black magic can only be mastered by using the souls of 1,000 commoners who died a painful death. Hugh demands an explanation from Leon, but the man only replies that this is his family's secret and must be respected as a tradition. Meanwhile, Sal cuts through the souls with ease, which entertains Alan because he's not dodging any of it. However, Alan quickly grows worried when he realizes that Sal is not affected by his magic. He claims that he has tested this move 100 times and no one should be able to resist the magic and avoid corruption. Panicked, Alan releases more souls, commanding them to surround Sal. However, his attacks are effective and Sal remains untouchable. With a red glow in his eyes, Sal claims that Alan can only die after he struggles enough. Just as Sal swings his sword to strike, Alan smirks, thinking Sal can't hurt him because he's his shadow. Suddenly, Sal reveals his ace, the Shadow Oath Damage Transfer, a technique that transfers any damage done to him to his shadows. A wound suddenly appears on one of the bastards, making Sal frown because he has to resort to something so unethical. He had forgotten that the Shadow Oath automatically redirects any damage he receives to the lives of other shadows around him. Just then, Alan reveals his next move, the Life Scepter, an extremely evil black magic capable of absorbing life force from others and attacking the target. As long as the life force of the attacked person is lower than the total life force gathered by the scepter, the target will die immediately. Although Alan doesn't know how Sal remained unscathed the first time, he is now sure that he will not escape this magic. He then draws on the life force of the bystanders, draining them of their energy until they fall lifeless to the ground. Meanwhile, Andrea watches in horror as the people around her collapse, including Renault and Lucian. Alan, on the other hand, is consumed by his magic, and he claims that he will not stop punishing the people around him. Meanwhile, Sal sticks his sword into the ground, concentrating. He recalls the time when he was fighting some foes from his past life, and he declared that he would not become an animal like them. Just then, Sal begins to use forbidden magic, performing a blood formation technique. His sword glows with power as rings of magic form around him. A massive flash of light abruptly erupts from his blade and Alan's staff shatters, its power no longer effective. Sal's magical aura, now stronger than ever, disperses streams of light, reviving the lifeless bystanders. The standers cheer, praising Sal for saving them. Suddenly, a shadow looms large as a mighty dragon descends from the sky, its roar shaking the entire place. It shatters the barrier with a deafening crash, landing behind Sal while roaring in fury. Just then, Sal tells Alan to enjoy his breath because this will be his last. The dragon spreads flames across the arena and it places its front legs on Sal's shoulders. Sal then turns to the dragon, asking if it's also angry. Meanwhile, Hugh is in disbelief, witnessing the dragon armor's legend come to life. Gloria is confused, so Hugh explains that if the dragon race can attune their will with their master, under the influence of intense emotions, it can completely alter their form and greatly enhance their master's abilities. Suddenly, the dragon wraps its wings around Sal and a transformation begins. Horns sprout on Sal's shoulders, metal armor covers his body, and his sword reshapes into a more powerful weapon. He now wields the dragon armor, forged from the bond with the creature. Alan's jaw meets the floor, unable to comprehend what's happening. He claims that it's impossible for Sal to synchronize his heart and mind with the beast, although he has earned its acknowledgement. Alan refuses to believe the truth, so he convinces himself that Sal is using illusion magic, and he's going to shatter it. Using the great forbidden magic, Alan summons 1,000 souls, forming them into a giant claw that looms over Sal. Unfazed, Sal declares that what made him connect with the dragon is their mutual wrath towards Alan. In a split second, Sal cuts through Alan's deceptive tricks with fiery, precise strikes, reducing them to nothing in an instant. Moving with unrelenting speed, he disarms Alan, severing both his staff and hand in one powerful stroke. Blood pours from Alan as he crumples to the ground, screaming in agony. Hera springs from her seat in panic, screaming her son's name, but Leon only glares at her, his voice cold and commanding, telling her to return to her seat. Despite the interruption, the battle in the arena rages on and Alan's dark magic continues to lash out, targeting Sal with relentless force. However, Sal surges forward, his fiery sword cutting through the spectral figure of Alan's magic, leaving a massive hole in its chest. As he does, Sal's voice rings out with anger and vengeance. This is for all the shadows that died, whose talent Alan stole and used until their very last breath in a previous life. Sal then closes in for the killing blow, his sword poised to strike Alan. But suddenly, a metallic ball deflects his blade. Sal is enraged to see Hera in front of him, blood dripping from her mouth as she holds her dear son. Furious, Sal calls her out for disrespecting the Cooper family's sacred duel of life and death. Meanwhile, Hugh observes the dramatic scene unfold, remembering that Hera was once an S-rank mage in the past, but after her marriage with Leon, she was never seen on the battlefield again. She actually used the help of magical artifacts to cast an 8th ring spell like the Holy Shield. This makes Hugh wonder if Hera was truly injured by the backlash of magic when she assassinated the former head. Suddenly, a powerful artifact around Hera's neck shatters, releasing potent magic. She uses the 9th ring white magic, Holy Spear, its radiant energy illuminating the arena. Levitating into the air, Hera resolves to end Sal's life, regretting not killing him when he was a baby. However, before things can escalate, Leon unleashes an overwhelming aura, silencing the battlefield with his presence. Hera's Holy Spear disintegrates and Sal's dragon armor vanishes in an instant. The sheer force of Leon's command leaves everyone stunned. Hugh observes from his seat, recognizing the unstoppable power of Leon's magic restraining ripple. Just then, Leon approaches Sal and coldly declares that he has no place in the Cooper family, ordering him to gather his men and leave the territory. Hera, on the other hand, pleads for permission to eliminate Sal, but Leon pays her no heed. Unbothered by his orders, Sal departs with Andrea and his loyal shadows. Far from the Cooper estate, Sal and his men traverse the mountains. Hugh rides alongside them, offering Sal refuge within his family. Sal rejects the proposal, knowing that such a move would be seen as a declaration of war against the Coopers. Instead of joining the Isaac family, Sal asks Hugh to enroll him in the Imperial Academy, leveraging the political turmoil of the king's failing health to secure the latest news from the capital. Hugh is intrigued, but he asks Sal why he should trust him. Sal knows that his swordsmanship talent is S-rank, making it the perfect trump card for the situation. Confidently, Sal tells Hugh that he will become the direct disciple of the hidden sword Saint Chris. Meanwhile, Street Chris, a legendary swordmaster, lies drunk near a grand gate. His reputation precedes him, a master of the silent technique, where his blade strikes faster than sound, tearing through enemies with unmatched speed and power. Though he appears carefree and indulgent in alcohol and gambling, he is ever vigilant, serving as the head of the king's personal assassins. A few days later, Sal and his group approach the outskirts of the mountains near Street Gordon. The city's 3 towers, forming the protective barrier known as the Holy Trinity, come into view. Meanwhile, Hugh enthusiastically yaps about the city's layout and noble presence, but Sal watches him cautiously, suspecting he cannot be trusted. I mean, look at that face. Sal plans to distance himself from Hugh and his group as soon as possible. Continuing their journey, Hugh discusses plans for Sal's entry into the Imperial Academy. He explains that Andrea will have to enroll as Sal's maid so that she can live with him legitimately. As for Sal's shadows, Hugh offers to settle them in the Isaac family's estate, where they can help as guards and deal with bandits. As soon as Sal hears about the bandits, his eyes open with interest, knowing that this is an opportunity for him. Sal seizes the chance and rides ahead, reassuring Hugh that he will take care of the bandits. As he speeds off, he tells Hugh to enroll Andrea in the Imperial Academy's School of Magic. Seeing how Sal just abandoned him, Gloria rolls her eyes and turns to her brother. With a sigh, Hugh says they'll have to take care of Sal's subordinates by settling them in the manor. Deep in the forest, Sal observes a settlement from a tree branch. He recalls that Angela, a 7-year-old child from his past life, was supposed to be captured by bandits here. She is the daughter of Saint Chris, a legendary warrior who has been searching for her for years. Sal resolves to save her, hoping to gain Saint Chris's favor and become his disciple. Sal summons his dragon, the creature's wings beating as it hovers protectively behind him. With his fiery armor glowing, Sal charges at the bandits, drawing his sword. He moves with lightning speed, unleashing powerful techniques, the flash of blood and shadows, a second skill of his swordsmanship inheritance, and the blood serpent's frenzy. His strikes are swift and deadly, cutting through the warriors with ease. Plum, the bandit boss, steps forward, raising his electric blades to counter. He sees the blood magic sword in Sal's hand and, realizing its power, tries to explain that he has ties to the Cooper family. But Sal isn't interested in negotiations. Without a word, he swings his blazing sword, decapitating Plum in a single clean motion. Just then, 2 blood-red silhouettes emerge from the air, and they become Sal's clone. The figures move swiftly and with deadly precision, battling the remaining bandits. In the midst of the chaos, Sal leaves, his focus narrowing to the bigger task at hand. Just then, Mayo flies overhead, landing silently on Sal's shoulder. Sal asks if Mayo found the place he mentioned, and the bird nods. Mayo leads Sal toward a stone on a wall. With a swift motion, Sal moves the stone, revealing a hidden cave entrance. He steps inside, cautious about the dangers that lie within. At the bottom of the stairs, a little girl sits in the darkness, asking if Sal has come to save her. Sal bluntly replies that he has come to bring her back to her father, and in return, he will ask the man to teach him sword techniques. Angela once mentioned that she can tell if someone is lying, and she can sense their intentions. Knowing this, Sal explains his motivations with honesty. Just then, Angela springs from the ground and exclaims that Sal isn't lying, making her willing to go with him. Sal carries Angela to the exit, but as they approach the light, they realize that escaping might not be an easy feat, because at the entrance to the cave stands a towering giant skeleton, looming menacingly over them. Sal explains to Angela that the creature by the cave's entrance is very powerful, and he can only block its attacks once. He then instructs the girl that he will use himself as a distraction, allowing her to escape. Sal takes a look at the skeleton, assessing that its 5-meter-tall height and strength are comparable to that of a sword saint. With a heavy sigh, Sal steels himself, signaling Angela and the griffin to get ready. The skeleton's massive hand begins to pull streams of magic, a flash sparking ominously at its fingertips. Sal charges forward, intercepting the attack with his sword, clashing against the giant's palm. The force shatters his armor, but he remains persistent. Sal yells for Angela to run, and she darts off, her footsteps quick and desperate. Despite having broken armor, Sal smirks, deciding it's time to unveil the dragon armor's hidden potential. With a sharp command, he activates the armor's release, unleashing a brilliant flash of light and a shockwave that blasts the skeleton's hand away. The dragon armor release separates the armor from Sal's body and discharges its stored magic in a powerful wave, stunning the enemy and offering a slim chance of survival. Just then, the dragon circles above Sal, ready to assist. Meanwhile, Sal smirks once again. And it was one of those smirks when you know you have the draw 4 Uno card. But Sal's smirk declares that a mere skeleton colossus can't stop his path of revenge. His voice is filled with confidence, but his joy is short-lived when he realizes that the skeleton has spotted Angela. With a guttural roar, the skeletal giant conjures a massive, glowing magic ring and hurls it toward Angela with deadly intent. The air thickens as the magic circle accelerates, and the moment it detonates, a wave of fiery destruction erupts. Sal's eyes widen in horror as he screams Angela's name. Thankfully, Maya was quick enough to snatch her out of harm's way, lifting her into the sky with its claws. Yet the weight of the burden proves too much for the bird. Maya struggles, its wings faltering, and in a desperate attempt to save Angela, it accidentally drops her. Luckily, Sal is already in position, catching Angela as she falls. Without hesitation, he bolts, carrying Angela as magical rings continue to rain down on them. Ahead, they reach a wall, only to find a seal-type magic array blocking their path. To escape, Sal must destroy the array's core. Behind them, the relentless magic rings continue their pursuit, and the griffin and dragon fight to shield Angela from harm. Sal knows they can't afford to delay, but as long as the magic chases them, finding the core is impossible. Angela suddenly recalls a place she saw where she was released from the dungeon, a location forbidden to enter. Pointing to a nearby building, she explains it could hold what they're searching for. Without hesitation, Sal leads her toward it. Explosions echo behind them, sending earth and boulders into the air. Though the skeleton is strong and slow and can only use the skeleton cannon from a distance. However, Sal doesn't have the dragon armor, so being injured would mean great trouble. Inside the building, they find a room reinforced with heavy chains and a glowing magical seal. Sal notes its strength but knows it won't hold for long under the skeleton's attacks. As they approach the sealed artifact, Angela seems transfixed, claiming the bow within is calling to her. Sal walks deeper into the room, causing the seal to collapse and the bow to materialize in Angela's hands. Angela beams, recognizing it as the blessing of Sylph. Angela is beyond pleased, but she urges Sal to keep moving because the skeleton might catch up to them. Just as they leave, the skeleton bursts from the walls, forcing them to flee further into the building. In the next chamber, they encounter a dark sphere radiating ominous energy, streams of magic flowing into it. A dark flame flickers within, and Sal realizes that the skeleton is decomposing and reassembling itself into the sphere. This self-destruction is the work of the mage who created the skeleton, a desperate tactic to unleash even greater devastation. Sal braces himself for what's to come, warning Angela that his next move might push him to the brink of demonization. If it happens, she must find a way to protect herself. Angela prepares her newfound bow, declaring her belief in Sal. Just then, Sal wakes the sword spirit as he uses the swordsmanship inheritance 4th skill, Bloodbath Storm. Streams of fire erupt from his sword, forming long, blade-like streaks that converge on the dark sphere. The relentless assault pierces the sphere on multiple sides, destroying it completely. However, Sal now has a new dilemma. The sword spirit declares him its possession and begins to ascend, carrying him away. Elsewhere, in the Imperial Academy at Street Gordon City, Chris sleeps near the gate. Just then, a mysterious man informs him that the Deathbringer of the second prince has left the city, and he asks if they should follow them. Upon hearing this, Chris vanishes into thin air, telling the man to take good care of his wine while he's gone. As soon as Chris leaves, the mysterious man takes the wine bottle in his hand, chuckling because the Lord is finally free. In the bandits' camp, Sal radiates a menacing aura, his presence suffused with demonic energy. Mayo and the dragon stand protectively around Angela, shielding her from harm. Sal's power is undeniable, the air thick with tension. With a chilling grin, he strikes the ground with his sword, unleashing a massive wall of destructive magic that obliterates everything in its path. The ground shakes as the energy surges through the camp. Mayo, recognizing the danger, takes Angela into the air to protect her. But during the escape, Angela slips and falls, calling out to Sal in desperation. He doesn't respond, his focus consumed by the dark transformation overtaking him. Before Sal can reach her, a burst of flames erupts between them, caused by the dragon's fiery breath. Furious at the interference, Sal retaliates with a blood-soaked blade, slashing through the fire and forcing the dragon to retreat. Meanwhile, Mayo quickly retreats to Angela's side, urging her to use her bow. Angela, still shaken, recalls Sal's earlier warning. If he loses control, she must protect herself. Her resolve hardens, determination flashing in her eyes. She prepares her bow, the ethereal aura surrounding it glowing with light as she strings an arrow. She tells Sal not to worry, as she will definitely survive. Angela fires a luminous arrow, but Sal narrowly dodges. Sal retaliates with a strong beam of magic, but Mayo quickly yanks Angela before she gets hit by the attack. Someone give this bird a raise. Just then, a dreadful, bloody spirit hovers over Sal, wondering which part of Angela it should eat first. He then walks over to the weak Angela, lifting her into the air with his hand around her neck. With a demonic aura, Sal declares that such pure blood should spill from a chest that is torn apart and shall flow slowly into his throat. Knowing that her death is near, Angela reassures Sal that he has done his best and that he shouldn't be sad. Her tears fall, one landing on Sal's cheek. For a brief moment, Sal's consciousness flickers. His eyes open wide, and he screams at the sword spirit within him that it's going too far. However, the sword spirit still overpowers Sal, and it's very enraged because he managed to break free on his own. The spirit then tells Sal to stop resisting, as he will never be free from being controlled. Meanwhile, Sal battles internally, acknowledging the demon's corrupting influence. With grim determination, he unleashes a devastating attack, summoning the blood feast to expel the demon from his body. The spirit shrieks in agony as it is forcibly ejected. It warns Sal that he is destroying himself, his actions risking his future as a swordsman. However, Sal perseveres, claiming that Chris will help him resolve that problem. Very soon, he will be able to deal with the sword spirit too. As Sal collapses on the ground, the sword spirit reminds him not to place his hopes on others, because he will end up regretting it. Suddenly, a cloaked man known as Sandru's Deathbringer looms over Sal, carrying a dagger in his hand. Furious, the man exclaims that Sal has brought trouble to his highness, and therefore he should die. But just as the blade descends, Angela steps between them, spreading her arms in defiance. Out of nowhere, the man's dagger and arm are mysteriously cut off under a flurry of invisible strikes. Soon enough, his whole body gets sliced into pieces, killing him in an instant. Before the assassin can comprehend his fate, Chris arrives, apologizing to his daughter for his late arrival. Together, they prepare to leave, but Angela refuses to abandon Sal. She's a true ride or die, a real one. She pleads to take him with them, and Chris reluctantly agrees, offering his aid in healing Sal's body. Sal, who can barely move, claims that this is not the only thing he wants. He then bluntly says that he risked his life to save Angela and inherit Chris's legacy. Challenged, Chris grabs Sal by the collar and claims that he gets to save his own daughter. Sal, on the other hand, claims that his mistakes caused small issues, but he still managed to free Chris from the second prince's control. 7 days later, in the Imperial Academy, Sal walks beside Chris down a vast corridor, still recovering from his previous fight. Just then, Chris tells Sal that he has already announced to the entire Empire that he will inherit his title in the future. Sal asks if this will make him the public enemy of the Imperial Academy, and Chris responds that he can avoid this by refusing to be his disciple. True enough, Sal becomes the talk of the town. A group of young male students gathers around Sal, their whispers sharp with accusations. They question whether he killed his brother, his entire family, and if he manipulated Chris to secure a place as his student. Sal brushes off their words, declaring that his goals go far beyond their petty insults, and he won't be stopped by a few cruel students. Suddenly, the sharp gleam of a sword interrupts the murmur. It's held by William, a counter student who is ranked first in the Imperial Academy Combat Branch, a gold sword master. His words drip with venom as he brands Sal, a murderer and a fraud, unworthy of the honor bestowed upon him by Chris. William now challenges Sal to a duel, intent on stripping him of his undeserved honor. The situation escalates as Prince Sandrew and his entourage arrive, their oppressive, bloodthirsty aura dominating the atmosphere. Sal realizes this oppressive presence could only belong to Sandrew. He starts to suspect Sandrew was behind the bandits and wonders if he also ordered William to challenge him while he's injured. Just then, William raises his voice again, declaring that if Sal refuses the duel, he must leave Sword St. Chris and abandon his noble title. Sal considers this challenge memories from his past life flooding back. William was once a tool used against him, a pawn in a similar situation. It feels surreal to face the same trial again. Resolute, Sal accepts the duel. As Sal's dark aura swirls around him, the students jeer, urging William to kill him. The students claim that only the best deserve a place in the Imperial Academy, not stray cats or dogs. This got me in my feelings, considering I barely graduated from school and all I have to do was answer questions. With a determined look on his face, William charges at Sal, his sword glowing with an intense light. He unleashes a powerful move known as Imperial Swordsmanship, charging heavy cleave, his blades slicing through the air with incredible speed and power. Sal, however, is quick to react. With a graceful sidestep, he evades the attack effortlessly, his movements smooth and fluid. In one swift motion, Sal counters with his own deadly technique of the Blood Demon Swordsmanship, bloodlight stealing shadow. Streams of blood swirl around him as his figure vanishes in a blur, only to reappear behind William in the blink of an eye. Sal taunts him, telling the young man to admit defeat because he's no match for his skill. William, momentarily startled by Sal's unexpected move, refuses to back down. His face hardens with resolve, and he retaliates with Imperial Swordsmanship. Enraged, a powerful shockwave that ripples through the air and forces Sal to retreat. The sheer force of the attack causes the ground to tremble beneath their feet. Sal realizes he's now in a precarious situation. His bloodlight stealing shadow technique is powerful, but it requires 10 more seconds to recharge before he can use it again. William presses on, his attacks growing fiercer. Sal witnesses William's ultimate combo and can't believe he managed to master it. With the swallow return technique, William leaps into the air, swinging his blade and demanding Sal to repent for his evil deeds. Unfazed, Sal smirks, taunting William by explaining that blood magic far surpasses the limitations of ordinary swordsmanship. He notes that William, in his current state, can only execute techniques at the level of the Silver Sword Guardian. Sal recalls Chris's warnings from the past, where he told him that using advanced blood magic techniques risks invoking the blood demon's phantasm and severely damaging his own body. Despite knowing the risks, Sal internally apologizes to Chris for betting his own life to gain William's loyalty. Just then, William charges with his glowing blade, but Sal sidesteps with a burst of blood streams. With the Blood Demon Swordsmanship third technique, Thousand Shadow Blades, Sal unleashes a storm of razor-sharp blood projectiles. The attack overwhelms William, who is in disbelief at the capabilities of swordsmanship. Just then, Sal appears behind him, his blade now poised at William's neck. Sal grins, enjoying William's stunned expression. However, his grin twists into a creepy laugh as his aura darkens, the sword spirit's influence fully manifesting. The crowd senses something is terribly wrong, and magicians begin casting fire, ice, and lightning spells at Sal. Threatened, the mages claim that Sal is using blood magic, and sure enough, a bastard like him is capable of doing something so blasphemous. The students raise their weapons, declaring that Sal is an evil villain who should be killed. However, William blocks their path, and he justifies that Sal has already earned his loyalty. Even if he's an evil person, William vows to protect him and die before he does. The tension escalates until Chris arrives, his commanding presence silencing the crowd. With one swift blow to Sal's neck, Chris knocks him unconscious and slings him over his shoulder. He scolds the students, condemning their cowardly behavior for competing with an injured opponent. The swordsmen and mages tremble under Chris's gaze, muttering in panic that his aura feels as if he could kill them on a whim. Among them, Moran Shavat, the second son of the Shavat family, hesitates before turning to Prince Sandrew, asking what they should do. Knowing that Sal entered the academy through a noble recommendation, he now plans to go to the trial mission hall. As Chris carries Sal away, he thinks to himself that blood magic will lead to a fatal end. Meanwhile, Andrea and her mentor, Professor Cassidin, materialize nearby. Andrea expresses a desire to help Sal with the blood demon phantasm, as she's the only one capable of doing so. However, Cassidin warns her to stay away, emphasizing the dangers of evil blood magic. Andrea argues that the magic faction and the ethics of magic are unrelated, just like Cassidin mentioned. Cassidin confirms that she's right, but blood magic is different from other forms of magic. Meanwhile, in a dark basement, Chris reprimands Sal, exclaiming that mastering blood swordsmanship requires perfect mental power, willpower, and physique. He suddenly recalls the week-long process of treating Sal in a special restorative liquid to help him recover. Chris gets even more disappointed when he remembers the lessons he taught Sal in using the bloodline magic power. Furious, Chris taunts Sal, asking him who will settle his vendetta with the Cooper family if he cripples himself. Sal only smirks, explaining that some things are just worth risking. Chris replies that he might die or hurt others, but Sal is confident that his master will not let his disciple Hera go mad and commit a massacre. As Chris finishes scolding him, the head of the Combat Academy branch, George Brandon, arrives. George then reminds Sal that he is a noble recommendation, so he has 1 week to complete his trial mission to prove his eligibility. As George leaves, he reminds Chris not to let his little schemes affect the normal teaching order of the school. The headmaster may be lenient with him, but Brandon won't be. When the man leaves, Sal questions Chris if George has beef with him, but Chris merely answers that George is no threat. He's simply a blade that anyone can use, and he was just lucky not to die in Chris' hands. Chris assures Sal that as long as he abides by the Academy's rules, George poses no real threat. However, he cautions Sal to prepare thoroughly for the trial mission, as George's involvement might make it very challenging. Later that night, Moran, holding a vial of dark magic, enters the wilderness secret realm under Prince Sandru's orders. Sandru tells Moran that the trial mission that George assigned to Sal is in the secret realm, so he should go and pour the potion into the water source. This causes the creatures inside the realm to become aggressive and radiate a dark aura. Sandru schemes to push Sal to his limits, expecting him to lose control so that Chris will be forced to kill him. The next morning, Sal and William meet before the mission. William warns Sal that the trial ahead will be especially tough, but Sal already suspects that it will be. He knows that George's deep resentment toward Chris could make the mission even harder than already is. Just as they're about to talk more about it, William clarifies that the challenge isn't what he initially thought. Something much more urgent has come up, an issue in the Grand Hall that demands their immediate attention. When they arrive at the hall, the crowd, including Gloria, Andrea, and others, is already waiting. Sal approaches the student on duty, Felix, and declares his intent to participate in the trial mission. Felix informs him that the dungeon's difficulty has unexpectedly increased because of a mutation in the secret realm, which means that a team of at least 4 participants is required. William protests, insisting the test be adjusted to allow solo participation. However, Felix explains that a solo trial won't be available until the following week, and Sal only has 3 days to complete the test to officially secure his place at the academy. Just then, a nearby student shouts that Sal should leave the academy because they don't need a bastard like him. Meanwhile, Felix asks Sal if he's going to find a way to gather enough people or safely exit the academy. Just then, one of the mages advises Felix not to give Sal any trials and to close for 3 days. Sal, on the other hand, is unfazed by all of the surrounding threats. Sal asks Felix if he thinks he can't build a team, and the latter replies that he doesn't really care. However, it's quite obvious that no one wants Sal to get into the academy, especially when he's destined to be a lackey like William. Out of nowhere, Sal places his sword on Felix's neck, telling him to kneel and apologize to William if he manages to find enough teammates. Felix only smirks, declaring that he will have to die before he kneels to anyone. Sal retorts that he won't kill him, but he will report everything to Chris, who is sure to protect his disciples. Unfazed by the threat, Felix exudes a dark aura and tells Sal to speak after he gathers enough teammates. Before the situation escalates further, Gloria and Andrea offer to join Sal's team, with William already by his side. Sal now has the required 4 members. With this, he orders Felix to register their group for the trial. As the confrontation intensifies, a dark, creepy figure materializes behind Sal, exuding a powerful, threatening energy. Sal, unfazed, challenges Felix, asking if he is truly ready to risk his life to complicate things. Felix tries to defend himself, claiming that he's just following the rules and accusing Sal of using Chris' name to intimidate him. Despite his anger, Philip kneels in fear. Sal and his team start to walk away, and William remarks quietly that he doesn't have to go too far for him. But Sal responds firmly, telling him that as long as they don't make mistakes or act maliciously, no one, especially not people like Felix, has the right to stop them. He also adds that he never makes mistakes. Okay, I guess he's Jesus now. Elsewhere, Felix rants to George, expressing his desire to kill Sal with his own hands. His aura darkens, thick with rage. George, however, warns him to remember the Academy's rules and not to let his emotions take over. He advises Felix to turn his anger into strength and wait for the right moment to confront Sal, when he can strike without being bound by the rules. Felix reluctantly agrees, still seething. Meanwhile, in the dense forest of Mylesa, Sal and his team face a large portal. William explains that somewhere in the jungle lies the inheritance of a powerful sorceress, a treasure the Academy has owned for hundreds of years. Despite this, no student has ever found it. The exit to the dungeon is at the top of a mountain, near a lake. The foot of the mountain is the most dangerous part of the dungeon, filled with nightmare-level monsters on par with a sword saint's strength. The closer one gets to the summit, the safer it becomes. Near the top, there are only low-level monsters, and if one stays near the pond, there is no threat because only docile magical creatures reside there. The mist in the forest is poisonous, and while a gold sword master can survive for about 10 hours in the area due to their physical endurance, a mage can only last 6 hours relying on their mana. Shortly after, the group stands near a dense fog and Sal warns them to prepare for battle. Suddenly, a mage and 2 swordsmen rush toward them, shouting for help. Behind them are massive demonic bugs, eager to kill them. William positions himself in front of Sal, noting the creature is Milas's insect swarm. These are extremely tenacious bugs that are difficult to shake off, and they don't bring any benefits. This is why it's best to just avoid their path. Damn, this William guy is a walking encyclopedia. The exhausted mage admits that they've been running for 20 minutes, desperately changing direction, but the bugs continue to follow. Just then, Andrea uses a fat cat spell, creating a protective barrier with the aid of a cat spirit. William is irked by the spell's name, but she only smiles at him with her cat paws. Meanwhile, Sal is pissed, and he comments on the uselessness of the situation, noticing that they've been running away without even trying to use their swords. Frustrated by their lack of action, Sal summons a blood serpent. It moves toward the bugs, attacking them with a blood-charged strike. In an instant, the bugs explode, and soon they're all consumed by a single dense stream of blood that returns to Sal's sword. Sal comments that the bugs don't even boost blood mana, proving that they are indeed worthless and evil creatures. Once the creatures are dealt with, the magical barrier fades, leaving only fog with a dark aura. The exhausted students collapse to the ground, relieved to be free of the threat. Sal, unimpressed, asks them if they're ashamed of being saved by their rivals. The mage, embarrassed and angry, retorts that Sal is a country bumpkin without taste. She mocks him, claiming that a bastard like him, who can't even inherit a title or land, is not worthy to be called a rival of any noble. She even adds that he's nothing but a source of amusement. Damn, why should you let my man Sal so hard? But listen, I'm just the narrator, and I'm not going to get in the middle of this. As the mage continues to yap, bright eyes appear from the fog, and the group tenses, realizing that something is watching them. The mage freaks out and asks what she's seeing, so Gloria cautiously explains that they must be monsters attracted by the insect swarm. Meanwhile, William braces himself for the fight, warning everyone to be careful because something is clearly wrong with these monsters. Just then, a massive paw emerges from the fog, revealing a giant bear with red glowing eyes. A loud roar follows, making the situation more intense. However, Sal remains unfazed, and he comments that it's no big deal because he will kill all the monsters.